NBA 2K25 is here, and it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Since the jump to the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles with NBA 2K21, the game hasn't really taken much of a step forward in my opinion. 2K23 added My Eras to my NBA, which was huge, but outside of that mode, not much else has really changed. 2K24 was basically a roster update with less forgiving shooting and more monetization than ever before. So for 2K25, with 2K's focus clearly being gameplay, I was expecting the game to more or less play the same as last year and be one of the worst 2Ks. I figured all the gameplay talk was just marketing fluff for some more animations that wouldn't really affect gameplay much. Luckily, I was wrong. Gameplay has taken some genuine steps forward and is easily the best it has ever been on the current console generation. By no means is this the best playing 2K of all time, but they did a great job balancing fluid player movement and realism, while also giving users more control over how they want to experience gameplay. Gameplay is really solid in NBA or WNBA games in 2K25. That being said, my NBA still suffers from similar issues in terms of contract logic, CPU decision making, and player progression, and also has some annoying historical inaccuracies. My career is an annoying slog that clearly only exists to be a tedious grind that pushes the player towards buying VC. My team added a new park for triple threat, further slowing down matchmaking and bloating up the game's size. You earn less VC than ever before for playing games, yet upgrades cost more VC than ever before. The Battle Pass system is still there, hiding certain player cards and even animations behind a paywall, and outside of some random new additions like go-kart racing, there really isn't anything new to do in this game compared to last year. It's a better game than 2K24 thanks to those gameplay improvements, but it's just as money hungry, if not more, and the majority of the game modes are either untouched or try and push you towards wanting to spend more money on this fully priced video game. Keep in mind that I am not a competitive NBA 2K player. I mostly play offline unless I'm playing with friends. My most played mode in the game is my NBA, not the city, and not my team, so my perspective on the game might be different than someone who only really plays online. So I have mixed feelings on NBA 2K25. On one hand, we have some impressive simulation-style gameplay, improved graphics and lighting overall, and the deepest franchise mode out of any other major sports game. But on the other hand, that same franchise mode in my NBA still has a ton of issues. The game is more predatory and pay-to-win online than ever before, and some features are actually now missing, such as All-Star Team-Up. And when playing head-to-head, you can't run with the same team every game anymore. And that only scratches the surface of my issues with this game. Let's get into it. Gameplay is the best part of NBA 2K25, but it's at its best on an actual NBA or WNBA court. Player movement is faster than usual, especially on defense, and player models shrunk just a bit to more accurately scale to the court size, which helps with spacing and gives you more room to work with. Shooting is much better than last year thanks to the new shot timing profiles. Difficulty-based might be the best choice for those who struggle with shooting, as you can practice shooting at a lower difficulty and work your way up until you find the right level of challenge. Normal risk-reward makes shooting similar to how it's always been, but the new low risk-reward option makes it so you can still hit a poorly timed shot by taking player ratings into account more than users' skill. High risk-reward is the opposite, and best for online play. The new shooting mechanic, Pro Stick Rhythm Shooting, is my favorite way of shooting now. You flick the right stick down and then all the way back up, timed with your player's release. I found this the easiest way to greenlight shots, and the motion itself is very authentic to shooting an actual basketball. I think it's a good evolution of the mechanic compared to holding square or just releasing the right stick. Having to follow through with the shot feels really good to me. The shooting meter, however, is kind of weird. The three options you can customize aren't close to shooting meters from previous 2Ks. The arrow is the closest one, but it's just not very easy to see or time. I prefer using rhythm shooting and looking at the player's shot itself rather than the meter to time a shot. Signature go-to shots is a really cool new feature as well. Holding up on the right stick starts a sequence for the player that eventually turns into an off-the-dribble jump shot, and you release the stick to time it. I found it really fun trying this out with different players and seeing how authentic the animations looked for guys like LeBron James or Kevin Durant. Dribble moves are also more varied depending on the player, and while they are fast and fun, your player gets fatigued pretty quickly, so it ends up not being cheesy. Gameplay still suffers from CPU logic issues and poor spacing at times, but player movement, shooting, and overall animation quality and variety has taken a massive step forward. Players play more authentically than they ever have. It plays kinda like older 2Ks like 2K15 in terms of the fluidity of player movement, but it has a much stronger penalty for fatigue. It has a similar fun factor. It also feels less scripted and more user-controlled than usual. If you run out of bounds, you run out of bounds, rather than feeling like you hit an invisible wall. I find playing through NBA games online or against the CPU to be challenging and enjoyable, where last year I found them annoying and restrictive. That's a huge step up. My career is a letdown and worse than usual. Let's start with the positives. The player builder. It's more forgiving than usual and lets you create pretty much any type of player you want without having to heavily sacrifice important ratings. You can even choose between real NBA player builds and get their signature animations, or you can tweak them, allowing you to more easily and more quickly create a usable build. It's a solid step forward. When you first boot up the game, it throws you into an NBA Finals game with your My Player fully maxed out and dominating. I found the gameplay really fun and impressive here, as my player was fast and fluid to control both on offense and defense. Afterwards, you can either exit to the main menu or continue your My Career story. At that point, I was thinking, okay, my career seems dope this year. But then reality hits. Your player literally wakes up from a dream, and it turns out the finals game you played in was simply him manifesting his future. You walk around your apartment to either practice in your My Court or exit to the city, and when you start playing your high school championship, you'll immediately notice that despite being one of the top players in the country, you are ridiculously slow. The fun factor of that initial game completely disappears, because as a 60 overall, you are unplayable, and it doesn't feel fair. All the positives about fluid player movement and realism mean nothing in my career because your character is just so slow by default, and it'll take so much time grinding just to make him somewhat playable. This game does this to push you towards buying VC, virtual currency, but it costs 200,000 VC just to upgrade your player to an 85 overall. That is insane. If you lose your high school championship, you actually have to do it again until you win, rather than the story being dynamic like it used to be. You would think that losing the championship would have you motivated and make for a good story, but no, you have to replay it until you win and then you get some VC. This feels lazy and as if 2K wanted to record as few cutscenes as possible. What was once an interactive NBA career simulation is now an obvious front end for buying VC and playing in the heavily monetized city. My career should be an offline mode, or have an offline option at the very least, that allows you to create a 90 overall player, for example, and play through the story. I get that being able to make a 99 from the start would be overpowered online in the park, which is why that should only be allowed in an offline My Career that is separated from the park. It should let you choose between a G League caliber career where you start from the bottom and try to rise to the top, or one as a role player, or one as a generational superstar. Only being able to start as a 60 overall and the mode only existing to push you towards the pay-to-win online modes ruins it completely. You'll have more fun playing My Career in NBA 2K11 or 2K15 if you're an offline player. The city is extremely large, takes forever to navigate around, and unless you pay real money for drip, no one is going to want to play with your brown shirt looking ass. The social pressure to buy VC is real. As you walk from event to event, you'll notice store after store where you can spend real money. You'll notice that you can now race a go-kart around a track for some VC, and if you can have a world record time, you'll win a bunch of VC. You can spin a wheel for a chance at VC. The city does its best to increase your subconscious desire for VC by giving you a small taste of it every now and then, but never enough. The whole mode appears to only exist to facilitate a virtual economy rather than actually being a fun basketball video game. I know a lot of people, in fact probably the majority of 2K players, exclusively play in the city and find the park the most fun when having competitive matches between 99 overall monsters where skill is the only difference between the players. but it's just not for me. Unless you want to spend hundreds of dollars to get to that point, or hundreds of hours grinding offline My Career games starting as a 60 overall to get to that point, this game will not be fun. And why should you spend so much time grinding in a pay-to-win game? If you enjoy the grind, then good for you, but I personally cannot recommend My Career to the average NBA fan anymore. My team has gotten worse in some areas. The auction house is back at least, but it never should have been removed. The season pass returns, making the game even more predatory and difficult for players who only spend $70 for the base game and nothing else. There is now an entire park for triple threat, so instead of instant matchmaking, you now get to walk around in your brown shirt and literally wait in line, hoping someone wants to play with you. This makes the game take up more storage, and it already takes up too much, and it's completely pointless. Speaking of pointless, My GM is back, but it's essentially My NBA, and the role-playing elements are now visual again. Although the mode doesn't seem any more complex or deep than it was in NBA 2K15, for example. Instead of true innovation, like with my team, they added another place to awkwardly walk around. You can now walk around a corporate office, and you can talk to John Moran or your team's governor. It's good to see My GM return, don't get me wrong. It deserves to be a standalone mode, and it's a pretty cool idea and concept, but it still feels the same as it always was. Hopefully it gets more attention in the future to differentiate it from the My NBA mode, as it should have a heavier emphasis on actual general manager duties rather than just walking around a generic office. The WNBA modes essentially turn 2K25 into a fully featured WNBA game. I have no complaints here. You can play through a My Career type career mode called the W and even play online, and unlike with My Career, it's not pay to win, and you start out at a much more reasonable overall. My WNBA is basically the same as My NBA, which makes it a better franchise mode than you'll find in basically any other sports game, and this is a franchise mode just for WNBA. For all of its faults, NBA 2K25 is a very deep game with a lot to do, but most of its depth was found in the game last year and the year before and the year before that. Playing WNBA games is really fun, and Caitlin Clark being a 91 might just make her the highest rated rookie in NBA 2K history. My NBA is the franchise mode, the dynasty mode, and the best mode in the game. And if you want to play a more fair version of My Career, you can create a player in My NBA and then play with them with a player-locked camera. Since My Eras is a thing, you could even play your career in the past, something not possible in the regular My Career. My NBA added a new era this year, the Curry era, which starts the league in 2016. I would have preferred a Bill Russell era with a black and white broadcast package, but the Curry era is still pretty cool. It's better than I thought it would be. You can be the Warriors right after they sign KD, or you can try and take them down. As cool as the My Eras feature is, this is the third year of it. You'd expect there to be more player licenses, you should be able to pick any starting year, and a ton of core issues with the mode should be fixed by now. Instead, they added farewell tours for retiring players and the FIBA tournament. Still no bubble in 2020, and the mode still suffers from issues with draft class generation, CPU team decision making, and player progression. The rosters are also less complete than usual. A bunch of players who just retired are now no longer part of the Players Association, meaning 2K can't license them unless they work with them individually. So guys like Blake Griffin, John Wall, and even Andre Iguodala are missing. It's weird starting the Warriors in the Curry era and not having Iggy there to take the final shot and save the planet from the Martians. I want Iguodala. Someone on Reddit named Tropical Wendigo released their own analysis on the completeness of rosters in My Eras, and he found that the Kobe era was the most complete, while the new Curry era, even though it's from 2016, only has 73% accuracy. The Curry era Blazers are specifically bad, only having 6 real players. This PS5 version of the game is now on PC, so I'm sure mods will eventually come fixing these rosters, but for console players, the licensing issues are pretty annoying. There are issues with historical inaccuracies as well, such as the 2016 Hornets practicing in a Bobcats-themed arena. The mode is head and shoulders above every other sports game on the market, but that isn't saying much when every other sports game on the market is terrible. It's more or less the same as last year, and I can't keep giving it praise when 2K continues to ignore the core issues within the mode. If you are exclusively an offline player, I would recommend the PC version of this game, and the improved gameplay combined with this deep mode makes the game worth its cost. This is the best mode within NBA 2K, and it makes franchise mode in games like Madden look like absolute garbage, but you can have basically the same experience outside of gameplay with last year's title on consoles. Blacktop is the same as last year, and it's nearly impossible to distinguish between teams. NBA 2K15 nailed Blacktop by having players wear home or away jerseys. What happened here, and why is this a headache to look at? Finally, online head-to-head has regressed. You can't play with the same team every match anymore. 2K did this to stop people from only using the most meta teams every match, but this means if you're a fan of one team and only want to play with that team online, you won't be able to every match. Also, All-Star Team Up is gone. I used to love playing that mode with friends for a free and fun online match with 10 real players. Why was that removed? Overall, NBA 2K25 is an incredibly deep game, but it's not that much deeper than last year, and the game modes themselves are incredibly flawed. Presentation is a mixed bag. The old 2K pregame show with Shaq, Ernie, and Kenny the Jet Smith is now completely gone. The scoreboard is like last year, where it takes up the entire bottom of the screen, and yet the scoreboard elements are flushed to the left, creating a ton of dead space on the right that the game uses as a ticker. I think a normal-looking scoreboard with a separate ticker that occasionally pops up below would be much better. This scoreboard does not look authentic to a real broadcast. Commentary is the same as last year, as is presentation altogether for the most part. For a sports game, it's pretty good, but it's been more or less the same for years now. 2K was once pushing the genre forward with presentation, but now it seems like they are content just leaving it untouched until another sports game can top it. This game would be so much better right now if it had competition. We need NBA Live or NBA Street to return. The broadcast elements are a little weird looking and use strange colors, but when playing older games through my eras, the presentation packages change to match that era, which 2K has been doing for a few years now, but it's still really cool. Other sports games don't do this. I do find it annoying, however, that shot feedback and your player stats in the top right don't match the era. They stick out pretty bad. The main menu is pretty basic and boring to look at, and pop-ups for My Team or the Season Pass appear, and the button to disregard the pop-up is almost hidden, while the option to click through the ad is front and center. This makes the game feel cheap and like a cash grab. The game has some glitches already too, in terms of polish. In my career, numerous people have experienced their player being copied and sharing the floor at once, so you'll see 3 of the same guy on the floor. There are frame rate issues in the city, some morphing and shoppiness all around, the usual server issues of course, and overall, it's not the most polished game, but the NBA on-court experience is the game at its best and most polished. Replays of players running down the court after a shot look better than ever and less awkward than before. The soundtrack is pretty good as well, mixing old songs and new songs together across numerous genres. I have no issues with it, and presentation overall, like I said, is a mixed bag. Overall, NBA 2K25 is more annoying than usual in terms of my career and overall monetization, but I have to give the game credit for taking some big steps forward with gameplay. This 2K plays way better than usual. This game would get a not good from me if not for gameplay being such an improvement, but it is an improvement. That said, 2K doesn't feel like it's really come a long way over the years, and it really seems like they are coasting by in most other areas in the game, banking on hitting revenue goals from addictive microtransactions rather than by selling a good product. I am feeling a 5 out of 10 for NBA 2K25. There's a really solid NBA game here, hidden behind layers and layers of microtransactions and unnecessary bloat. I wish 2K would focus less on go-kart racing in the city and more on making NBA 2K the best NBA licensed simulation basketball video game of all time, but that won't happen without competition. This game is not worth $70, but I would say it's worth about $35 on sale. Playing through my NBA in any of the eras with the improved gameplay will be a blast overall for offline players. If you're an online player on the fence, unless you want to play one of the most predatory and pay-to-win online games out there, your time is better spent on a game that actually respects the intelligence of its player base. You'll either have to grind for way too long or pay hundreds of dollars to have a good time in most of these online game modes. NBA 2K25 has a solid core game and it has potential, but Take-Two is doing their best to ruin it. However, as always, no matter what strides the developers take with gameplay, the game seems to be getting greedier and greedier, while resources are directed towards pay-to-win modes more than anything else. 2K desperately needs competition. Thanks for watching.